Hello and welcome back to all 543 of you amazing consumers of Pax Dei and Pax Dei related content, and the nearly 60% of you who have not yet decided to hit that subscribe button. I'm Altari, the professional gamer, and this is another PAX Friday review, the show where we talk about all of the fun, interesting, new, and exciting information that has dropped for Pax Dei over the last week. This week, we got an incredible update from the developers over at Mainframe about combat in Pax Dei. They talked about RPG mechanics in relation to combat itself, as well as magic, item enchantment, and a whole lot more. We covered that in detail in one of our earlier videos this week. We have a link up above. You should totally check that video out if you are interested at all in combat. For this week, we are going to be going over all of the screenshots that have dropped this week. We had a couple in the combat update from the developers, as well as another Friday drop detailing some of the bugs in the current ongoing Friends and Family Alpha. We're going to go ahead and get to all of those screenshots, but before we do, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if this is the kind of content that you like, so that you can get notified in the future. While you're down there, you can also like it and share this video with any of your friends who are interested in Pax Dei. Let's go ahead and get on over into the screenshots. All right, so let's go ahead and get into looking at all of these screenshots. Now, the first one that we have is of a couple of knights that look like they're fighting in an arena. One of the things that we learned from the combat update is that players will actually be able to fight each other in the PvE only zones in the form of dueling. That's going to be a really exciting thing to do. I know that my clan is going to be interested in holding grand tournaments and all of that for players to come and enjoy. So it's really awesome to see that this is something that's going to exist in game. Here is one of the more exciting images that we have today, so it's fitting that we're going through it first. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first thing that really draws our attention, the Hypnotic Band. We talked about this actually in the combat update video that we posted earlier this week, but the Hypnotic Band, in case you aren't familiar, is a jewelry ring that procs some sort of stun condition onto an enemy or a group of enemies. And we can see all these different pieces of armor here. I also noticed that we have these different pip marks, which we've noted in a couple of different videos. But one thing that I noticed, especially in this screenshot, is that the single pip mark versus the 4 pip mark, or maybe even, I think there's a 5 pip mark right here. It looks like this single pip mark might be pertaining to either a tier or a quality level, as this helmet to me looks a little bit more tarnished than the rest of this character's armor, which is definitely a higher quality level or a tier level. So maybe that has to do with the level of the gear that the player has equipped, and it also has a visual appearance that is tied in with how many quality levels or tier levels you have. And then also, one of the more exciting bits that we saw here is all of this inventory that's filled up with different pieces of gear, as well as different potions, and even a little bit of materials as well. First things first, I just wanted to point out, this is definitely a cloak of some sort. I wish this was equipped. I've been wanting to see what cloaks and capes look like in Pax Dei for a really long time, pretty much ever since we saw it in the initial trailer for Pax Dei. So I'm really hoping that we'll get to see that at some point in time. Mainframe, if you're listening, please let me see what one of these looks like on a character. It will get me so excited. But then we also have all of these other different pieces of gear. Now, what we covered in our combat update video is that you are technically allowed to carry as much gear as you can inside of your inventory and swap out your equipment based on the situation that is at hand. So we can see here that the player looks like they have maybe 1 or 2 different sets of side sets of armor. We have what looks to be more of like a cloth or robe set with mixed in with a little bit of leather. Then we have this other set, which this might just be a town set. It looks just like cloth armor. But then we have some rings and different pants and greaves and all of that located on another portion of the player's inventory. So these might very well have different abilities or magic abilities or skills associated with them, and we as players are going to be able to carry all of those around. Now, obviously, there is a detriment to doing that. One example is whenever you die, you're probably going to lose durability on these, and you're going to have to go and corpse run yourself back to your body, or have maybe your friends pick it up, or have your friends revive you there. And there's obviously a risk that is pertaining to taking all of your best stuff all over the place. This is even amplified in PvP, and it's a cost benefit analysis that every player is going to have to do individually. Now, one of the potions in here was confirmed by Spire to be a stun resistance potion. It might have been this green one that's on the toolbar right here, but it also was indicated that it's not actively working in game. But it's cool to hear that there are different types of potions that are designed to proc or give resistances to different status effects on the players. This is all of the equipment for a player right here in the inventory. I am really interested to see what or how many of these other pieces of armor have magic associated with them. As we can see right here, this mez and an icon here, it almost looks like that is a skill or a spell that you would have the ability to cast, though I don't see where that would be on this player's inventory. Anyways, moving on to the next picture. Here we can see a player looks to have a axe equipped. It also appears that it might be getting used two-handed, and they're just fighting this Zebian acolyte right here. It looks to be similar to a dungeon that we've seen pictures of in the past, though we haven't seen this particular corridor. It looks like there might have been some additional work with this grating that's right here. The lighting in this is super cool, and it's very ominous to be walking around in here with a bunch of zombies, essentially. Then in this image, we have a couple of interesting little tidbits. We have this Zebian that's here holding what looks to be Pickle Rick.
Turn myself into a pickle. I'm Pickle Rick.
Or just an effigy of some sort. Or maybe even a voodoo doll. And we also have the exact same hand axe that the player had equipped previously, but they also have it equipped with a shield. And then also in the inventory bar, we have this Horn of Gondor is what it looks like. It might just be something that was looted off of an enemy or something like that. But to me, it looks like the Horn of Gondor. And hopefully this player's fate is not the same as our dear beloved Boromir.
They took the little ones. He's down.
Moving on, we have an image of what looks to be players either doing some sort of magic. It might be actually some kind of combined magic. Kind of reminds me of the good old days when you're in Dungeons and Dragons and your characters are in the middle of a very dark dungeon and you have your wizards and spellcasters trying to cast something as your barbarians and fighters are down below keeping watch and keeping them safe as they finish off a ritual. And speaking of rituals, it looks like we have another one right here. This one looks possibly a little bit more nefarious. Everyone's circling around with their torches. It looks darker at night, and they're surrounded by these wrangled and riled trees. And it almost looks like there might be a player that's either being sacrificed or is praying as well. And it's never good to have green smoke. That typically means it's toxic. But I wonder what this is. I wonder if rituals exist in game. They haven't talked about rituals at all, but we've now seen a couple of images where it appears as though there are a lot of players gathered around. Maybe they're just dropping buffs, or maybe this is some sort of ritual that does something a lot bigger but requires more people to participate in. Next up, we're into all of the funny / bug related screenshots from the current ongoing Friends and Family Alpha. What other way would you start off a bunch of fun photos than with this guy? Then here we have what looks to be a glowing tree. Can't exactly tell what's going on here. Definitely glowing or on fire or something in between that, if that's even possible. Then here, speaking of fire and things that should be on fire, we have a couple of furnaces that are stacked on top of each other. This one looks like it's actually underneath the water, but it's still functioning. So it's definitely good that players are going through and testing where things are placeable and making it so the developers know how to go and fix that so it's more realistic when we get into the game. And another thing that I noticed in this screenshot as well, other than this different piece of chest armor it looks like, is all of the jewelry is actually physicalized and on a character. We can see right here there's an earring, as well as a bracelet and a ring. I know some games, when you're equipping your jewelry, it's just a thing that pads your stats. It's not necessarily something that's actually showing up on your character. So it's really awesome that for Pax Dei, all of these different jewelry items are physicalized, so people can actually see when you're decked out with a bunch of bling. And here we have an image of a player with a bunny rabbit sitting on top of her head. It's definitely very funny that players are so obsessed over these bunnies. I know that there's some more terrifying bunnies than others, to which I wouldn't want to have at least one or two of those on my head. But for at least the time being, this looks like a very peaceful encounter for this player. And speaking of peaceful encounters, this looks like a player's worst nightmare. We have a lot of Sethians. We have a Sethian brother. We have Sethian fanatics. We also have Sethian crusaders, it looks like, as well. And this just looks like a very bad mob spawner that has gotten carried away. This is not a pull that you would want to make in-game, I don't think. Then here we have the first confirmed appearance of Cerberus, the mystical beast of Herculean proportions, or at least of normal people proportions. This was actually a bug that has existed. We did another video on the bug screenshots, which is really funny. You should go and check that one out too. But floating animals was an issue, so hopefully they're able to figure out what's causing this and they can fix it. But in the meantime, I am more than okay with enjoying a couple of funny images of Cerberus walking around. Now, this image right here reminds me very much so of from Star Wars The Last Jedi, when Rey is trying to save the Resistance and she's opening up a cliff with all of the rocks floating around her. This is what this is, in my opinion. And then right here, we have what looks to be a player who is just straight up floating into a rock. They also have a couple of texture breaks on their player character as well, so they might be kind of falling apart at this point, falling through the seams. And then here we have an image of a player who is larger than life. They are as big as their home, and it looks like they're about to smash it out of existence. Then here we have the underside of the map, is what it looks like. Now, an interesting thing here is you can definitely see the different squares of the map, but you can see where the water is potentially outlined as well. And then we have this other part of the map that's over here. It makes me wonder, is this like the dungeon, or is this just a continuation of the map and this square hasn't spawned in yet or something like that? Either way, this player looks like they are having a very bad day, and it's going to be a very hard time for them to get back home. All right, so that is all that we have for this week's PAX Friday review. We covered a lot of different stuff. If all of the combat screenshots interest you, you should definitely go and check out our combat update that was posted a couple days ago. We have a link down in the description for that. It has a lot of information with regards to combat, enchanting, weapon mechanics, death mechanics, and different RPG style mechanics as well. It's a very interesting video, and you should totally check it out. But that is all that we have for this week. If you enjoy this type of content and you want to be notified whenever we post more, you should totally subscribe to this channel. While you're down there, like the video and share it with any of your friends who might be interested in PAX Dei. Until next week, I'm Altari, the Professional Gamer.